let's talk about Evangelion. Neon Genesis Evangelion is a show about the difficulty of interpersonal relationships, as well as the difficulty of being a human being in general. And this is all framed through a show about teenagers in magic robots fighting aliens. The last third of Evangelion is not only the most memorable part of the show, but it's what makes this show a truly subversive masterpiece. And it's not about something as shallow as, oh, the show is dark and depressing and has an ambiguous ending, although if that's why you're into the show, then that's fine. What I find the best about this part of the show is its almost unwavering dedication to psychologically dismantling our cast and building up an incredibly tantalizing mystery almost completely in the background. Today I'm going to do my final breakdown of the TV version of Evangelion, focusing on its last third, with videos about End of Evangelion coming later, as well as trying to shed some light on what exactly happened in the end. Bleak endings for sci-fi and fantasy shows were obviously nothing new, even by 1995. Evangelion creator and otaku hater Hideaki Anno himself was inspired by the works of Yoshiyuki Kill-Em-All Tomino of Ideon and Gundam Seed fame, as well as by Go Nagai's apocalyptic Devil Man. But I'm not sure if the last 10 or so episodes of the series were intentionally made that way. Although Anno had a basic outline and plan for the series, a lot of events were also made up on the fly, with other members of the production staff getting the story from Anno often at the last minute. This explains the constantly changing tone, from the slow, dreary moodiness of the first third of the series to the light-hearted but also more plot-focused second third. The tone of the last third is increasingly dark, but far from quiet. The plot suddenly advances in huge leaps, with later episodes having constant cutaways to various characters with their own agendas. This rapid escalation is also another reason why I love this show, as the intrigue around the second impact, the Evangelion, Seele and Nerve build up to an almost unbearable high. What is even more interesting is the roller coaster our characters go through. Let's take a look at Shinji starting from episode 16. About every episode of this last third finds some way to beat him down. As a direct consequence of the lighthearted events of the previous episodes, thanks to his increased closeness with his friends and praise from his father, Shinji is now more confident and finally defeats Asuka's synchronization ratio. Due to Shinji's meek nature and negative self-image, his confidence briefly breaks down at the mere sight of two kids laughing at him on the train. Nonetheless, he takes charge against this episode's reality-breaking angel, and shit gets fucked. After Best Waifu Ramiel, of course, episode 16's angel Leliel is probably the best designed and represents the utter alien incomprehensibility of the angels. And at the same time, the episode implies that after absorbing Shinji, Leliel attempts to make contact with him in the first of the now iconic introspective train sequences. Though the episode ends on a seemingly happy note and everything seems fine again, something has fundamentally changed. From this episode on, every episode that follows shakes up the foundations of the show in some way. Shinji's classmate and friend Toji is selected as an EVA pilot, and is immediately almost killed, by Shinji's hands no less. The EVAs are revealed to have their own will, Asuka's backstory forces us to re-evaluate everything we've seen about her, and she is incapacitated, Rei is seemingly killed and revealed to be a clone, and finally another EVA pilot, Kaworu Nagisa, is introduced and has a close relationship. Oh sorry, not relationship, friendship. He becomes friends with Shinji and worthy of his grace for about 15 minutes or so before Shinji is forced to kill him because he is in fact an angel. And this all happens in the span of like 9 episodes? In Shinji Ikari, Anno has crafted a protagonist who is actually relatable. He is flawed and would later be extremely flawed, but still displays heroic attributes. Time and again he comes back to fight in the EVA, as he does in episode 19, shortly before being absorbed by it, despite being given the chance to run away, and without goons from Nerve hunting him down this time. Before we get into Shinji's self-reflection in the ending, the arc is actually full of character progression. Misato channels her inner rage for what happened in the second impact into figuring out the conspiracy and secrets of Nerve. In this part of the series, Misato is the only one of the 4 main characters actually proactively trying to accomplish something, while her character stuff has been mostly dealt with, primarily by her speech in episode 15. Like Shinji, Misato has a negative self-image, but she has constructed 2 images to cover this up: a professional demeanor at work, and a carefree, messy, bubbly one at home. Both of those hide her insecurity and pain that she carries, and we learn in episode 21 that she was actually a mute for years following the second impact. She seems to even doubt that her feelings for Kaji are not even real, but that she's just using him as a sort of father substitute / filler of a hole. A hole in her heart, of course, you perverts. Now this hole, the series claims, is something we have in all of us. This is related to the hedgehog's dilemma mentioned way early in the series, and in the first Evangelion video I made, by the way. And it's one of the few themes the series has managed to carry from beginning to end. All the main characters showcase this in some way, but more on that in a bit. Speaking of Kaji, the way he, probably the most likable and charismatic character in the show, is killed kind of further elevates the tragedy. After all, until episode 24, he's really the only character to die in the present day of the series. Even Toji only got hospitalized, even though this narratively accomplishes the same thing. Not only does this affect the mental state of Misato and Asuka, but it also robs Shinji of an emotional support figure. After all, in this last third, Kaji has several inspirational conversations with Shinji, but rather than lecturing him, Kaji seems to be trying to help Shinji find his own way in life. Not that he really succeeds, unless Shinji's primary goal in life was to go see a comatose girl and mask. Anyway, speaking of, Asuka gets some development, finally. It is pretty much foreshadowed heavily that Asuka's brash and cocky exterior is, like with Misato, a mask. It isn't until episode 22 that we learn about her past. A contact experiment with Evangelion rendered her mother insane, and she tried to kill Asuka and seemed to only care about a doll that she believed was her daughter. A bit later, Asuka's made a pilot, but her mother kills herself. This ironically gives her a lot in common with Shinji, and the two are constantly on the verge of finding common ground, only to push each other away. And from Asuka's perspective, Shinji is just passively there instead of actively trying to help her. Because communication is hard. And lastly, there's Rei. Hey, she exists too! After episodes 5 and 6 and later 13 actually gave her some focus, Rei is just kind of there most of the time. In episode 21, the flashback episode which we'll get into later, we see Rei as a small child. Shortly after Gendo dumps Shinji somewhere. Sorry little dude, but I wanted a daughter, so bye. However, this little Rei is seemingly killed in the very same episode by Ritsuko's mother, years before the start of the series. Well yeah, as one of the many events that traumatized Shinji, Rei is a clone. She becomes less emotionally detached from others, partly due to Shinji's influence, during the course of the series. But during a battle in episode 23, she sacrifices herself to save him, seemingly a culmination of her character development. But that would be kind of a lame ending, so she miraculously recovers. Because don't worry, we have spare parts. Rei is literally a clone made partially of Shinji's mom's DNA to house the soul of the angel Lilith, to be used by Gendo for some unknown purpose. While Rei begins acting much more coldly again after her resurrection, we do eventually get to know how she feels. Rei is defined by her purpose that Gendo created her for, and she feels constrained by this, but at the same time has existential dread over not having any self-worth once her purpose would be complete. The multiple Rei clones are also a metaphor for the fact that there is not just one person in us, but rather versions of us exist in the mind of others. We are often defined by how others see us, and we long to be accepted as ourselves, while simultaneously being afraid of the person we are deep down. This is some brilliant stuff to explore, but it sure would be nice if we got a bit more character from Rei before the very ending of the TV series. In the end, she is more of a plot device, the purpose of which we never even really get to see, nor is she ever properly explained. The last two episodes kind of throw the storyline out of the window, to the disappointment of many. But what is the storyline of this series anyway? Up until now, the story has been cryptic, but still fairly straightforward. We fight these alien things to prevent them from triggering an apocalypse, while this Illuminati Council plots something. But since there is no resolution, we are left in the dark about so many things. Where did the angels come from? What are the Evangelions? What is Rei? What is Kaworu? For me, a story needs to conclude in a satisfactory manner for its characters first and foremost, but I can still understand the need for a narrative conclusion. And the fandom was mostly in the dark about these things, in the West anyway, until a fan effort was made to translate the 2003 Japan-only PS2 game Neon Genesis Evangelion 2, which contained the classified information supplementary material coming straight from Anno himself. While much of this material is told in End of Evangelion, or somewhat implied in the series proper, the classified information removes much of the mystery about these lingering questions, which is why I'm personally not hugely interested in it, but it is fun to read about. We learn a lot about the older characters in episode 21, like about how Ritsuko's mom had an affair with Gendo, but was actually just used by him to finish the supercomputer. And in present day, Ritsuko herself is repeating the same mistakes, to the point of destroying the Rei clones in episode 23 due to apparent jealousy? For a 14-year-old girl? Well, that's creepy and weird. Anyway, this episode follows the story from the second impact to the dissolution of Gehern, Nerve's predecessor. It's a really good episode that sheds some much needed light on the mystery. That episode and the classified information reveal that the first angels, Adam and Lilith, came to Earth and became the progenitors to the angels and humans, respectively. An experiment with Adam led to the second impact and the destruction of half of the planet's life. The thing was covered up by Seele, and they established organizations to fight the angels, but also secretly fulfill their own goals. My favorite concept in the series is the AT field. In story, it's a powerful offensive and defensive force field that makes the angels and Evangelions as powerful as they are. But like in any good story, it also serves a metaphorical purpose, one representing an ego barrier and something that gives human beings individuality, but at the same time separates them from one another. Also, every Evangelion unit is housed by a human soul, which makes complete sense in retrospect and is actually a genius plot twist for those going in blind. The sleek, almost human-like designs of the Evas also complement this, since they almost literally are humans, enslaved by machines to synchronize with the children of said dead humans. Dead mothers, to be specific, because the series loves its Freud. In retrospect, it also conveniently explains why every named member of Shinji's class seems to lack a mother, as they're all potential Evangelion pilots. Rei and Kaoru are special cases. Rei doesn't seem to know about her status as a human being with Lilith's soul inside her, and the theories about whose soul inhabits her Eva are endless. Kaoru in the meantime is able to control Asuka's Evangelion because the Eva bodies are cloned from the angel Adam, whose soul is stashed in him. While Anno never went full Akira Toriyama in his approach to writing, he did nonetheless end up rewriting and redoing a lot of the story haphazardly and often at the last minute. Still, all the pieces in Evangelion's storyline do fall into place, until the controversial ending. The previews at the end of episode 24 show only partially animated sequences and storyboards from what would eventually end up becoming the end of Evangelion movie. Thus, it can be concluded that the movie is roughly what was supposed to be the last two episodes originally. Behind the scenes, there were many things that contributed to the ending becoming what it eventually became. There is, of course, Anno's previously mentioned writing style, which caused grief to the rest of the production and made it harder to complete the episodes before their deadline. The darkening tone of the series, partially caused by Anno's depression at the time, and especially the violent destruction of Toji's Evangelion in episode 18, Unit 1 devouring the angel in the following episode, as well as off-screen sex had by Misato and Kaji at the end of episode 20, caused the network to move the series to a later time slot, and its ratings were not great to begin with. The production difficulties and lowering quality of the animation is noticeable by the end of the series. Notice how much they loved to reuse animation of Hyuga, Ibuki and Aoba in the command center. Now contrast this to the absolutely gorgeous battles from the first few episodes. It's evident that the time and resources are both running thin. Gainax had to outsource parts of the animation to Tatsunoko Production just to complete the episodes on time, which is not that uncommon to be fair. There's also the infamous 1995 Tokyo subway sarin attack, which led to changes in the plot. Similarly, Anno's growing interest in psychology due to his depression did much of the same. So if you take all that into consideration, is it any surprise that the ending turned out how it did? That being said, in its own way, the ending is quite genius. The Human Instrumentality Project and Gendo's apparent goal throughout the series is the combining of all humans in the world into a single consciousness to patch the void everyone feels in their hearts. This also forces our characters to come face to face with their problems, and these are spelled out to us as clearly as possible in episode 25 through Rei, Asuka and Misato sitting in a chair and being berated by themselves and other characters, with plenty of text on a black screen, recycled animation and simple still images. But it also creates a unique, haunting atmosphere that uncovers some ugly but fascinating truths about the nature of humanity. The last episode takes it even further. While it focuses entirely on Shinji, it also brilliantly uses facets of other characters to go through his problems. Like Misato, Shinji hopes establishing relationships with others and being respected by them will fill his internal void. Like Rei, Shinji doesn't see himself as being worth anything, and like Asuka, Shinji primarily exists for himself and sees piloting the Eva as his sole purpose. And yet, this negative self-perception is the same as running away. Just as Shinji ran away from his problems literally in both episodes 4 and 19, he's running away metaphorically and psychologically due to his negative self-image. He's pretty much blatantly told he's taking the easy route by saying he's worthless rather than facing up to his problems. This episode is very creative for its lack of budget, with some visually beautiful scenes. And of course it contains the always popular alternate universe, also largely composed of recycled animation and characters conveniently talking off screen. Of Shinji's happy life in school in a world without angels or Evangelions, and Rei as a perky transfer student, toast in mouth and all. Many people remember this scene, but not everyone remembers that the scene represents how one's world changes so much through the power of perception alone. So what is the final takeaway in the show's ending? A cynical person would say that Anno is working out his issues and maybe addressing a hypothetical audience with some platitudes like, "Hey, stop being depressed, just change your perception, dummy." Personally, I don't think that was the point at all. Rather, it's a first step towards change. It is not only about perception, but about like 100 other things. To me, most importantly, it's about the importance of loving yourself. And to quote the episode itself, if you know yourself, you can take care of yourself. What? Really? That's it? We go from badass robot fights to some guy telling us like, you just take care of yourself, you'll be fine. Congratulations, you're done. Now, of course, the reception to this final episode was somewhat controversial, but I think it's a perfect way to end the TV show. But it's not the end of this series yet, because there's still the end of Evangelion to cover fairly soon, in fact. And after that, there's the, rebuild movies. But anyway, until next time, my name is Zokolov. Thanks for watching. Okay, when I say next time, I don't mean in like a couple of months, okay? So you don't have to make fun of me for that. It's gonna be like 2 weeks at most.